Occasionally, in previous tutorials, as I've manipulated events on the timeline, you'll have seen me move one event partially over the top of another event. The result being that instead of one event pushing the other event out of its position, the events overlap and create a crossfade that merges these two events, i.e. a fade over a short period of time. I'll show you what I mean. Here on our timeline is our first event. Well, during playback, as the cursor gets to the end of the event duration and moves to the second event, the view instantly flicks from the end of event 1 into the start of event 2. You'll probably notice what I mean as I rock the cursor back and forth. But if I left click and drag event number 2 towards the start of the timeline so that its start position overlaps the end of event 1, we see this rectangular area with the curved cross lines on it, indicating that when the cursor now gets to this position, where our two events collide on their shared timeline track, then Vegas plays both events simultaneously. Now, even though I say simultaneously, that's not quite true. What it actually does is, during this crossfade area, the end of event 1 fades out for the crossfade duration. It's totally visible at the start of the crossfade area, and you can see that total visibility indication there, where it says opacity at 100%. But by the end, it's been fully obscured by event 2, and the converse applies with event 2, whereby it's invisible at the start of the crossfade area, but fully visible at the end, and the opacity there is 100%. So, as the cursor moves over this crossfade area, we get the appearance of the two events merging from one to the other. In fact, the correct terminology for a crossfade covering a video track is called a transition. Incidentally, do notice that a crossfade occurs with audio too, as you'll see here with this audio track. Well, you can see the volume is set to full at the start of the crossfade area for the end of event 1, and once more gets reduced to 0 as it becomes silenced at the end. Well, that's what this function behaves like by default when we slide and collide two events. As you've just seen, an automatic crossfade is applied, and there is an automatic crossfade button up here that you can use to activate or deactivate the function. Okay, that's how we create a manual or semi-manual stroke automatic crossfade by colliding events like this. And it's very useful for allowing us great precision with our transitions and how long they last and where they occur. Now, there is also another way of applying automatic crossfades as you place events on the timeline, and this is much more automatic, as you'll see in a second. But first, there are a couple of things you have to do to enable this. First of all, go up to the Options menu and then roll right down here to Preferences. And once this Preferences dialog opens, flick to the Editing tab if you're not already looking at it. And where the checkbox is there, where it says automatically overlap multiple selected media when added, well, simply check in there. OK, and once activated, close that. Now, to see this in action, I'll clear the events from the timeline. From this point, if I multi-select events, and I'll go for these 3 events by multi-selecting them, and then drag and drop them onto our timeline, well, as you can see, they automatically have a crossfade applied, and by zooming in slightly, you'll see the crossfades a little bit better. By the way, those automatic crossfades are not set in stone. I can still adjust them like that, just left click and drag to suit. Okay, so that's how we implement crossfades and how we set them up so that we can manually add them in or have them brought in automatically. We'll next look at using crossfade curves. Okay, so when we just looked at crossfading, we saw how easy it is to adjust the amount by which the adjacent events on our timeline crossfade by simply left-clicking and dragging, so that more of the event overlaps with its partner event. I'll quickly do it again, but this time, instead of with a video, I'll show you with an audio file, or rather, a couple of audio files. First of all, though, I'll delete what we have on the timeline, and then, once done, I'll drag this audio file of just the guitar track from this song to the timeline for event 1. And now I'll move this second audio file of the vocal track to be event number 2. Incidentally, I'm going to use these raw audio files later to build up a remixed version of our track. Anyway, simply dragging audio event 2 to the left creates this audio crossfade. Now, it's likely you'll be satisfied with the crossfade curve that automatically gets implemented, but if not, you can adjust the crossfade curves to suit. Now, to visually get an indication of how the crossfade will sound only means looking at the crossfade path. For example, between these two audio files, these two audio events, we see how the individual volumes adjust across the crossfade range simply by following the path. So if you do want to adjust the crossfade curve that is automatically set there, right-click in the crossfade region and choose from this resulting shortcut menu, Fade Type, and from this submenu then choose a suitable crossfade type. I'll try this one and confirm it, okay? Easy enough when we want to adapt the curve to suit our project better. We've done this with audio, but rest assured the same principle applies when we use video. Okay, so that's the very easy way how we adjust crossfade curves. Right, I'm going to leave it here then, now that we've had a good look around how we use crossfades, so that we can transition between one video event into another, and we can crossfade the audio volume so that that transitions between one event and the other.